Welcome to Whatcha Makin', a podcast about sharing ideas, discussing the business of making, and connecting with the maker community. Your hosts are Alex Adams, an engineer turned furniture maker of Type A Furniture, and an alien pretending to be a DIY craftsman, Alex Duffey of Duffey Woodcraft. This is Whatcha Makin'.
Hello, makers, and welcome to Whatcha Makin', a podcast where we talk all about our current projects, spotlight the makers throughout the community, and remind you that if you have a peanut allergy, don't use dynamite, as peanut oil is a key ingredient in dynamite. This week's main discussion is customer service. I'm Alex Duffey, and you can find me on Instagram and on YouTube at Duffey Woodcraft, and as an instructor over at CNC with me.
Sorry, I ran out of tape measure room. I hit the ceiling, and then it went flaccid. I am Alex Adams, and I am at Type A Furniture, also Type A Furniture on Instagram. And I would like to remind you that the mitochondria is still the powerhouse of the cell.
Absolutely. But you know who else is a powerhouse of our cell?
The Enron egg?
No, our patrons.
Oh, okay. Yes, our patron. Yeah. Patrons, goodness, I was trying to read Patreon, and I combined that with patron, and it just did not work out. Anyway, if you go to patreon.com/whatchamakinshow, you can find all the wonderful tiers that we have starting at $5, so there is a tier out there for you.
What you doing?
So this week, this past week, as I hear the tape measure keep getting...
I was trying to do it nonchalantly without making a bunch of noise. I think I got about like 4 feet or 5 feet out of the tape measure before it started collapsing on me.
That's what she said. So yeah, this week I have been focusing on starting YouTube videos again. My summer break from YouTube is officially over, so I have like 5 videos currently in production currently. I made a squirrel feeder yesterday. I am editing all the footage I did from AWFS for my class. So I'm going to put up my full class that I taught. I made boxes for those funeral boxes a couple weeks back, and so I recorded that process, so I need to edit that. And then I'm still in the process of figuring out that Nintendo NES cart made from wood that I'm working on, which I have the CNC portion done at this point and figured out to run it. And now I need to get the laser portion of it dialed in for the outside design and the label design. So
you said that was 2 double-sided carves to get those 2 pieces together, right?
2 double-sided carves on the CNC and then a single-sided on the laser.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's going to use my full repertoire of everything but the lathe. Basically, it touches everything in my shop except the lathe to break this down and get it made. So it'll be very interesting when it's all said and done. Plus, I have a plan on how I'm going to shoot the video, but yeah, so I've been filming all the B-roll right now as I'm making it, and so I still need to do the intros and stuff. But yeah, so that's for me has just been focused all on YouTube videos this week now that I'm back from Vegas, and we're going to be going camping next weekend. So FYI, we will not have a show next week. We're taking a break for a week since I will be out of town and nowhere near a computer, thank goodness. And yeah, so it'll be a nice time going camping. So I'm trying to get some videos done before I go camping so I can release the first one while I'm gone.
But is probing still on the table for camping?
Is probing still on the table?
Yeah, is probing still on the table for camping?
Like, if I get abducted and probed?
Obviously.
I mean, that's always on the table. I have a sign that just says, "Take me with you. I don't want to be here." And
is it on the top of the camper, or the top of the car? You got like a sign on there.
I should just spray paint it on the top of the truck, just so that wherever I go, they know that they can take this one.
Yeah, so that the whatever that object is that they say could be aliens by December will be ready for you.
Yes, the 3rd interstellar object that's going through our solar system right now, which they say is a comet, but some scientists are saying is an alien spacecraft here to destroy us all. Who knows?
A very lofty accusation just based off of some vectors of its trajectory.
Yeah. It's like saying that somebody threw a baseball at the city next to you was trying to nuke your city.
Yeah,
Basically the same
There's
thing.
a lot of room for interpretation there.
Yeah.
So before I forget, were your AWFS classes, were those recorded by the show, or is that your recordings that you did?
So I recorded the full entire class, AWFS. So Mark Adams, as many of us makers know, Mark Adams, who does a lot of maker photos at Maker Camp and so on, he was hired by the show to be their photographer. So he came in and did some recording of video and photos, but not like the full class. So
he was just doing more highlights.
Yeah, he was doing highlights,
Gotcha.
and I'm hoping I can get my hands on that because, he's obviously a lot better of a photographer than I am. So I'd like to, use some of that for my own personal stuff. But I had set up a camera in the front row and had it record me and track me while I was talking. And I had my mic on so that had good audio at least. So.
Did you record it at like ground level so it looked like you were like Godzilla?
No, it was at table level, so it's still a little bit up. So we'll see how that goes. I'm also, as I'm editing it, I'm actually splicing in the presentation so you can see it more clearly than on the projector behind me as I'm teaching. So looks a lot nicer than just a stable shot for the entire hour. So,
gotcha. So are you trying to keep it pretty close to that hour, or are you trying to like slim it down some? Because you said it was for your YouTube, not any other platform. Because you teach on some other platforms. This is just your YouTube platform that this.
Yeah, exactly. I teach on CNC with me, but no, this is just for my YouTube platform, and I plan on having it, be right about that hour. Each class was the presentation was about 45 minutes, and I'm combining the two classes into this one video. So I'm cutting them up a little bit, and so that you get the information from both classes into one class. So, because they both classes had the beginning part of the presentation about the intro portion to CNC and learning the terminology and stuff were exactly the same. It's just the second half of one class was about integrating it into your workshop. The other class was about using a CNC to design wholesale products. So I'm going to do both of those and just kind of squish them together into one class.
And you're keeping both of the wet t-shirt contests that were accompanied with both of those, right?
That might get cut for time.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, that's what I'm working on. What are you working on, Alex?
Oh, before we go over to me, on the Squirrel Feeder, was that the picnic table one?
No, that was something a maker had made that I saw that I thought was really pretty. I will throw a photo of it up here on the screen. So what I ended up doing is I wanted to make, because I live in the Pacific Northwest,
right.
It rains half the year here. So wood outside doesn't last very long, and I hate making something and then in 2 years have it like moldy and not look great. Even with outside staying out here, it's still, our weather is really rough. So I made it out of HDPE and a clear acrylic. And so here, there's the image of it. And so it's a very simple design. It fits right on my railing. So it fills the squirrels can get to it either side. Plus there's a platform on top that they can get to their corn on the cob and hopefully leave my bird feeder alone since they'll have their own food source. So
is that corn on the cob on the top, does that have its own mount, or is it just hanging freely up there?
It's hanging freely right now. I am next time I go to my local hardware store that, so it's called Park Rose, but it's like Ace Hardware where you have 1,000 different types of fasteners that in all the little drawers and everything. I'm going to look for a specific stainless steel spike that I can then drive through that top piece of HDPE. So that way then I can spike the corn on the cob on it. But I just didn't. I wanted to show in my video that you could do it within 2 hours from start to finish, to show you that, it's a very quick project, and it's that if you have a problem, your CNC can help you solve it very quickly right away. And so I didn't want to go make another run outside of the shop to have to go to a store and stuff. I wanted just to show that, hey, grab the stuff in my wood shop and make the project.
So this is the DLC portion.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Well, what I've been doing a lot of, so I had the county fair this past weekend, and then we also had all of the fair activities that we entered my son into. So we had a lot of prep stuff going into that, both for all of the things that we entered my son in, because this was his first year as like an official 4-H age kid. The age group under that is Clover kids.
When you say enter my son into that, I'm seeing like, I made this pie while I made my son, and here's a blue ribbon for the best child ever that I've made. Is that basically what you entered him in?
Oh, yeah. No, we did not do... I don't really do baked goods anymore because the judging is so subjective on that one. We do a lot of vegetables and a lot of crafts and other stuff. So on the vegetable side of things, our garden had been like, it just went through the ringer because we had a really, really hot summer, and there's a squirrel in our backyard that just like ate a bunch of our beans plants. And I think it was also digging into that area as well. So we barely got, because we plant 3 different varieties of beans. There's the regular green beans. We have wax beans, which are green beans except for they're yellow. And then we have I think it's called a bush bean, but it's essentially a green bean, but it's purple. So we did not have any of the bush beans, because those were the primary ones that got dug out by the squirrels. And we had enough of the wax beans to enter, because you got to enter 12 of them. And we did not have enough green beans. We only had like 5 or 6 green beans that we actually had that were ready at that time. Because part of it is, not only do you have to grow it, but it needs to be fruiting at the time of the fair itself. So we had enough cherry tomatoes that we were able to enter that both as him as a 4-H kid and him in just like open class, which anyone is able to submit something.
Can I ask, just because I don't know, and maybe for our listeners don't know either, what does 4-H mean?
Oh God, you're gonna make me look like a bad 4-H person. It's kind of like they stand for something. I gotta pull it up. There's a whole like pledge thing. It's kind of like halfway between Boy Scouts and FFA.
Okay, so it's a Boy Scout type like that type.
Yeah,
of
it's more farming.
Program.
Yeah, more farming and home ec type stuff, kind of wrapped all into one livestock.
Yeah, that's fine. I just had no idea what you meant by 4-H.
I think it's mostly a Midwest thing, if I remember correctly, but I haven't traveled around much of it to know. Okay, the H's stand for head, heart, hands, and health. There's like a whole the value in things. They have a clover that has a 4-leaf clover, and then there's an H on each of those. That's their like emblem that they do. So it's
powers combined. I am Captain Midwest.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, yeah, that's a good summary of it. But yeah, there's a lot of crafts that he did. My wife likes doing a lot of crafts, so we had entered some stuff that me and my son had done over the past year. So that included a picture frame that we made together that was out of walnut, out of one solid piece of walnut. What were some of the other ones? We had a couple of 3D printed things where we designed a couple of 3D prints and printed them. And like we just did that just because we were doing that together, and then we found out that there was a category for it. So we're like, oh great, we can submit this stuff in. So it was like, you know, a double whammy where we just doing stuff with the 3D printer, and we happened to have some things we could submit for that. And then he had some other crafts things, like, you know, you do tie-dye and making pillows and other types of things. I've always wanted to do a model rocket because there's like a model rocket section, but I've never gone into that stuff as of yet. They do have a full-on woodworking section.
Yeah, see, our county fair is going on right now, and I was told I should enter in some of the woodworking stuff. I'm going to look into that for next year. But for the 3D printing, like, is there rules as far as that? Like, I'm assuming you can't print 3D guns or stuff, but like, is there like size limitations or anything, or is it just like bring whatever?
We honestly didn't look into it until after the fact. It's pretty open-ended. I think it's more of like designing something that you wanted or needed. I can't even remember off the top of my head they have like all these class numbers that you enter under. So then there's, all of the rules, but for the most part, you document what it is that you did for that project. And some of them are like more focused on the design process, some more the like actual making of something, and so the judging kind of varies on that stuff because there's a few things that they're looking for in those particular categories. But
I've always wanted to do like some of the small things that you 3D print, but on a large scale. Like this is an old video; it's like from 2 years ago. But Emily the engineer on YouTube, she 3D printed a benchy, but like boat dinghy size.
Oh, gotcha. I think I remember seeing that at some point.
Yeah,
you should just print Blink 182 like this big.
Yeah, but I'm like, think about like your actuating dragons that everybody prints, but print one dragon sized.
Oh yeah, like I have looked into. Are you familiar with Dummy 13?
No.
So it's like this the 3D printed action figure essentially. It looks kind of like those people that those wooden people models that you use to like pose for when you're drawing stuff. It's kind of like that, but it's just 3D printed, and then you have a bunch of accessories for it and everything. And you can print life-size versions of that. And it like I've wanted to do something like that as kind of like a attention grabber for the booth kind of thing, because it's like, what better way to grab attention than a life-size model of something? Like, I mean, I could probably find a file for like C-3PO or some other like infamous character that people would instantly recognize that would be like life-size, that would just like blow people's minds.
Another maker, Hamilton Dilbeck, he got himself 3D scanned, but like a lot of makers do at these events, and he printed a life-size bust of himself as a hat rack in his shop.
A hat rack. That's interesting,
right? But like, imagine like, yeah, definitely like 3D print like a life-size version of yourself at the booth, like holding out product or something.
Yeah, that would actually probably be a fun project to do, because I know I had mentioned it in a previous podcast episode about doing some 3D scan stuff, because there are a few programs that you can just run off of your phone that you can do. Obviously, they're not going to have the level of resolution and detail as some of those like LiDAR 3D scanners that are in the thousands of dollars, but for what we would be doing, we don't need that level of detail, because I do have a couple of 3D scans from Workbench Con of myself that I could use, because I do have the one of me holding a plank that I can also do, so that would be an interesting one. I've printed that one, but at like 10% scale, so that one turned out pretty good. That was a good scan. But yeah, that gives me some ideas of things we could potentially do next year. You gotta keep one-upping yourself each year. Although this year what we entered was a TNT block that my son modeled, and then we printed and we assigned color to it. Like, it was a fairly straightforward project that we could do, because when you are adding color to your 3D print, it's very easy when you have flat faces, because you can just use the fill tool on those surfaces to get the color added. When you start getting the much more complicated surfaces, then it becomes a little bit more challenging to color it accurately how you actually want to, which I have not. I'm sure there's a way to do stuff like that a lot easier. I just have not dove into that. It's essentially like using MS Paint for those of us who are old enough to remember that. R.I.P. MS Paint. Where you've got the different types of fill tools, whether it's filling in the entire object or like the spray paint feature, or like pencil drawing or whatever. So yeah, we had a lot of projects that we made for the fair that we had to do the type ups on those ones for the prompts that they had us answering in those, and then actually getting those submitted, and then taking my son to some of the in-person activities, because they have like a bike rodeo, which is like just skills for riding your bike, where there's like slalom stuff. We did not make that one because of a timing issue, but we still made a there's like a fishing thing where you basically try and hit a target and get close as possible. So it's kind of like, you know, when you throw darts at a dartboard, but you're casting to a specific spot, and then you just measure how closely you got to the target, and they have to do that like standing and sitting and like by a tree, so that you simulate being in that environment or something like that. But he had fun doing that one as well. I'm trying to think of other stuff we entered, because I covered the vegetables. We talked about some of the 3D print, a little bit of woodworking. I did have some chopsticks that we made together. Those ones only got a red ribbon, which is like the like you're doing okay, because you've got like the white ribbon, which is like the
That's
white
your
ribbon is
participation
like
trophy.
yeah, that's like bless your heart, you submitted something. Red is like, you could have done better. Blue is like, you did pretty good. And then purple is like, you did really, really well. And then they've got the like champion and grand champion, like purple rosette ribbons that you can earn for those ones. And we actually had 3 items that got selected to go to the state fair. So one of them was the picture frame that we did out of a single piece of wood, which that one, what we did is we took a piece of walnut that I had that had some crotch figure in it. And this one was kind of like a jab at the Wood Whisperer. Sorry, not the Mark Whisperer. That'd be different. Definitely someone's OnlyFans account. Because he had gotten a reputation the last couple of years of like basically just cutting out the crotch figure out of a piece of wood to use in a project. So it's like, okay, what if I do the reverse and cut out the crotch piece and then use the outside as a frame for a picture that we have. So my son and I had made that, and we put in a picture of my wife and myself when I proposed to her. So that was something that my son had helped me make, and so it's like, oh yeah, we can submit that as one. So that was one that's going to go to the state fair. The other 2 are 3D prints, the TNT block that I had mentioned, and then the other one is a little coaster that we made where my son, he wrote in one of our cat's names, which is Pepper, and then we kind of color-coded everything to be the colors that she is, because she's a tortoiseshell cat. She's got the little calico thing going on with the white, brown, and black. So that one also got selected for going to the state fair. So, and I would like to point out that all of the state fair projects were ones that I did with my son. None of the ones that my wife did with our son made it to the state fair. So, just some bragging rights there.
Oh, I'm sure you haven't rubbed that into your wife's face yet.
Actually, I have not yet. I have yet to do that, because I was at the fair working the booth the entire time, so I did not have an opportunity to rub that interface. So
neener.
Yes. So the booth setup that I had going into the fair, so I had printed a lot of stuff leading up to this, because I didn't know what to expect for the demographic on this one, because I expected mostly families and stuff, so it'd be pretty similar to like what we did at the farmers market. So we did a lot of different stuff. We did a few light switch cover plates, so I had some like Lego ones as well as some like cow print ones that were there. We printed some cookie cutters ahead of time. We printed these long, like 5 foot in length, articulating dragon snake things. They're fairly basic in construction, so they weren't too terribly hard to print, but they were just like super long, so it was kind of like that wow factor when you just put it across the table and it's 5 foot long. And then, of course, I had the Charizards there. I had the large Pokemon cards, regular size Pokemon cards. Let's see, what else did we print in preparation for the farmer's market? We had lots of toothless, articulating dragons there. I'm trying to think of what else we had on our... We had Pokeballs that you could actually open up and had a spot inside to hold things. Pokedex. So I had gone into it not knowing what to expect, so it was like you don't want to print and make too much of one thing, but it's like you have that FOMO of like, if I don't make enough, then, you know, do I lose out on sales? So that was, you know, kind of leading up to that, just trying to figure out what I had. So like, I felt fairly good about most of the stuff that we had made going into it. But, you know, we took a little bit of a gamble on a few things, like printing the cow print light switch covers and like the cookie cutters and other things, because like sometimes you just got to try new things. And kind of my mantra this summer has been just trying to add one new product category each time we set up a booth, so that we at least have something new to try. And whether or not it works, you know, is up to the, you know, the customers there. So sometimes you take a little bit of a stab in the dark. Other times you've actually heard some feedback from some customers and found out, you know, yes, this is something that people want, because for every one person who asks for something out loud, the rule of thumb is that 10 other people have probably thought about that exact same thing. So when you have someone actually speak up and ask for something, definitely pay attention.
Absolutely.
And then I did do a little bit of experimentation with the booth setup. I had actually sent you some pictures as I was like laying out my tables, because I had a 10-foot by 15-foot area, and I have 5 6-foot tables. So I was trying to do some type of setup. Originally, I thought I was going to do something that was going to look kind of like the number 3, where like the prongs of the 3 were facing outward to the edge, and then people could walk in. But I didn't end up having enough space to do that, so I kind of did this, think of it as like parentheses, like 2 L's together, and then you could kind of come in. Well, maybe not 2 L's. One side was L's. No, yeah, it was 2 L's, but it was like you could kind of come in, and then I had my chair at the back is kind of the setup that I have. And then I had two tables deep on one side, because I had brought my 3D printers there to print and be in person, because that's also another like thing to draw people in. So I had the 2 A1 printers and kind of in the back, because since they're that open frame, you don't want people to touch it. But I put the P1S out front, just because since it's enclosed, who cares if kids get their nose prints on the front glass? Like, it's fine. So that's kind of what I went with for my setup, is having the A1 printers kind of in the back corners so that people could see them, but not necessarily like immediately touch them. But the P1S was out front with my 2 AMS units that stack on top of it, so it's a little bit towering and you can see it come in. So, you know, you've got the Charizard on the other corner, you know, being Charizard and being awesome, and then the huge 3D printer on the other side, so you kind of, you know, get the attention of the kids. And then kind of going the length of that one was the long dragon, to kind of like draw them in to see how far it was. And I had also taken and put some of my larger, more expensive items out front, just because those are easier to keep track of, so you don't have someone swiping something and going. I honestly didn't really have an issue with that, just because there are ebbs and flows to how many people were in there, and it wasn't overwhelming like all of the time where it was like packed with people, because we're, you know, our county probably has like a population of, I don't know, 15,000 people, so like it's not like a huge fair, but it's not super small. So there was a decent amount of people that were there. So I probably need to get one of those like special director chairs where you're like up a little bit higher so you can see stuff better. I didn't have one of those. I just had kind of like a rocking chair where I sat in back, but I was able to see stuff just fine. So I did play around with the setup with where I had put stuff. I had changed from previously doing like almost a hodgepodge of stuff where it's just kind of strewn about and you kind of got to like dig into it to find stuff. And what I did was I kind of oriented stuff by price. So it was like each, so these are folding tables that I had. So like there's a crease in the middle of each table. So what I did on some of them was I put some of the Pokemon cards in the crease because they would naturally stand up. Like the oversized big one that I have are like a little bit smaller than a standard piece of paper. So it makes a natural divider there. And then I would put like all of the $10 items in one little area from all the different types of 3D prints that I had, and then the $5 stuff over here, the $4 and the $3. So I kind of pulled like a Sam's Club / Costco model where they like put their expensive stuff in the front, and then you're like more inexpensive items further back. So you have to like go in and find some of those smaller items if you're looking for smaller items, and then they look, you know, like a much better deal because, you know, the $15 and $20 stuff was up front. It's like, oh yeah, this is only $5, so people feel good about the pricing on those.
Only $5.
Yeah, and I did throw I 3D printed some I don't know if you want to call them like little price tag things, but I had like little like $5 emblem or $10 emblem, and I kind of set them there. It wasn't like super obvious that stuff was like $10 an area, because I just kind of wanted to experiment and see. So it seemed to help because once a family member who had whatever kid came in, they're like, oh, you've only got, you know, $8 left because you got, you know, funnel cakes or whatever before. They were able to kind of like figure out what it is that they wanted to get. So that was a little bit of a good learning experience there. So yeah, that's kind of the high level of my fair booth experience.
Fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it!
Oh, do I have all the fun things that I broke this week to tell you about?
I was like, yeah, you had a long list.
So the first thing that I had, so the P1S that has 2 bays for the filament, 2 AMS systems. So each of those has a PTFE tube that comes out of it that the filament spools through. And so to move this thing, I had decided that I was going to cut that and put a it's basically a double-ended like extender thing, so if you want to like splice in some more cable, or sorry, not cable, but the PTFE tubing, you definitely can. So what I used it for was so that I could take all of my filament off of the P1S and transport them independently, because having that tall thing in the car when I was moving it was going to be a pain in the butt to try and make sure that it didn't like fall over while I was driving. Albeit the county fair is like about a mile away from me, so I don't really have to go far, but still. So I got everything out and I had everything turned off, and I knew that from what other people had said is you don't want to use like a pair of like wire cutters for that, because if it's not sharp enough, it will bend the tube in on itself and kind of press it inward, and so sometimes your filament might catch on that. So I had gotten out a razor blade to essentially cut through it slowly so that I don't have any like burrs or other pieces of plastic kind of like folding in on itself to have any issues.
Yep,
so as I
makes
like
sense.
started cutting on this, I get this like blue electric shock on there. I'm like, what the hell? Did I just cut through a wire? Because I was like, there shouldn't be any wires on this thing. So I like stop for a second and I look at it, because I was like, I'm pretty sure this is just like tubing. There should not be any wires in here connected to it, because those are all separate. So I looked around and I was like, okay, it's fine. And I think it just must have been because I know that PTFE, which is you know, oh gosh, what's the trade name for it? It's like a non-stick surface. I think DuPont owns it. Anyway, I think because it's an insulator, it must have like built up static charge or something like that. So when the blade actually cut and was moving across there, it was enough to like have an electrical charge. But that like very much caught me off guard, even though I'm like aware that sometimes plastic can kind of like build up charge. So it was just something that kind of like definitely caught me off guard. So it was okay in the long run. And then one thing that I had done as I was transporting all of this, so in order to do prints while I was there, I took filament with me. And how I had transported it was these spools of filament I just coil them up, and there's some holes in the spool that you can kind of feed through to keep it from unwinding itself. There's little attachments that you can put on there to like clip it in place, but I had found when those are unspooling, they're more likely to get caught and they're just more of a nuisance, so I just feed it through the hole on there. And so I've got 2-gallon bags. I can fit 2 of these spools of filament in, and I throw in a few of those desiccant bags to make sure that it stays cool. Because even though the building that we were in was air conditioned, transporting it, like, humidity was high, so I didn't want humidity to get soaked into the filament because that can cause issues later on. So as I get there, I was putting stuff down, and I had discovered that because the filament that was spooled through on these was kind of like poking out just a little bit, they were actually poking holes in the Ziploc bags. So it was like defeating the purpose of keeping them sealed off and keeping them dry. Yep. So fortunately, it's not something that I had to that I'm probably going to be doing like a whole lot of, and they're just Ziploc bags. Although they're the nice ones with the little zipper thing on there. There's a distinction. It's not the double thing that you have to squeeze your fingers on. That's just like a pain in the ass to do. It's the nice zipper one, because I live life fancy. So unfortunately, it poked a hole in some of those. But what I learned was that I need to face those. The side where I feed it through the hole on the spool to point inwards towards each other, because then the filament is less likely to actually poke the outside of the bag as it's facing outwards. So that's how I remedied the situation when I transported it back home. So that was, I think we did just fine. Even if there were holes in the bags, there was enough of desiccant and stuff in there that I was not going to get a huge change in humidity, or at least I wasn't expecting it. There's a little bit of rain over the week, but not a whole bunch, but enough to be thinking about it. And then one of the other things that I had was I was taking requests for some of the 3D prints that were there, but I was trying to also keep up with all of the stuff that I was losing on inventory as I was selling it. And so I was running the printers as fast as I could. And sometimes with those new models, I forget to check a couple of different settings, and I get a few of those prints where some people recognize this when it's basically you just hear the scraping noise of the nozzle on the end of the plastic as it's going back and forth because it's gone too fast. Something is peeled up just a little bit, and it's just it's making little confetti pieces of plastic because stuff is warped ever so slightly because it's gone fast. Because probably the biggest culprit is the type of infill pattern that you have. So there's an infill pattern called gyroid that is, I've found, very susceptible to having issues if you go over the normal speed that you set your 3D printer. So there was a couple that I did not realize had a gyroid fill on them that I was printing, and so I had to scrap those prints and start over again. And I also had some issues with my the poop chute on the P1S for the excess filament when it's changing colors. That thing has started to have a few more issues with getting clogged occasionally, because that one, since it's an enclosed box, there has to be an actual chute that it goes down, and with it being an enclosed tube, it's more likely to have things get stuck on there. And so I had one print where essentially what happens is stuff gets clogged up on there, and something reaches over towards the print plate and it gets stuck on there. And then fortunately, one thing that happens with the P1S, although I don't know if it's designed, is that there's a front cover on it that's magnetic, and sometimes if that stuff that sticks up hits that magnetic cover will pop off and then the print will actually pause. So it does save me a little bit of filament when that cover pops off of the print head and it pauses it. So it's unfortunate that I had lost a couple of overnight prints while the stuff was over at the county fair, but at least it didn't use an entire spool of filament on a really, really big project that ended up being essentially spaghetti. And then there was one night where I was printing some Labubu keychains, which if you are not familiar with that, they're basically the demon reincarnation of Furbies mixed with Beanie Babies.
I was not familiar, but that describes it perfectly, I think.
Yeah, so it's one of those new trends, and so I was just doing them as keychains to just kind of like experiment and see if I would actually sell any, which I did, and so that's why I needed to print more overnight. And these little guys, which are like, they're only about the ones that I printed were only about 2 inches tall, and they had some support filament on, or some supports that were printing with those, and with the A1 with the bed going back and forth, the supports had not quite gotten to the rest of the model yet, and so there was enough motion there that they started popping off, and I had to pause that print. And it's tough because the cameras that are included in the printers, they're not very high resolution. You can get like snapshots of pictures, but they're not always at the best angle, so it was not apparent to me which one of them failed. So I couldn't go in and deselect items to say, don't print these anymore. Because I've done that before, where if I'm doing, like, say, a plate of something and there's, like, 9 of them in there and one of them is having issues, I can tell the printer to not print that one, and then the remaining prints I can still finish, and then I don't lose the entire print bed. But this one, like, there's enough stuff rolling around, I just couldn't see which ones were actually intact. And there was maybe like 1 or 2 that would have been intact, but I would have ended up wasting more filament than anything. So I wasn't, gonna try and save the rest of those. So that was a little bit of a bummer, but it was a print that I hadn't done very many times, and I was running it really fast on the bed slinger. So it was kind of almost a recipe for disaster, but it was like, I was just trying to keep up because we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I was selling stuff like crazy at the fair. So, yeah, and then the other fun thing was surviving off of fair food, destroying my gut and making me beg for vegetables when I got home. Because we were there from noon to 9 p.m. 2 of the nights. The Saturday was 10 a.m. to 9, and then Sunday was just basically noon to 2 o'clock, which is basically just enough for a couple of stragglers to come in, and then you can tear down. So yeah, my gut is ready for me to get back to a slightly better, less greasy diet. Although I did not have any of the deep fried Oreos that were there. I'm not super hardcore when it comes to food, where it's like I need to have deep fried everything. It's like, you know what? I love my double stuffed Oreos just fine. I'm just sticking with that.
I agree wholeheartedly. However, their deep fried cheese on a stick is really good at the fair. But I like cheese everything.
Yeah, deep fried butter on a stick is also, very, very American thing.
It is. I have not gone there yet. I feel like that would just destroy me completely. Like I might as well just check in at the hospital at the same time.
Oh, pretty much. Yeah, you might as well just live on a toilet.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see. For me this week, I haven't been. I've been focused on the YouTube video, so I haven't been making a ton. But with the Squirrel Feeder, I did run into an issue that I should have accounted for, and it's a very simple mistake. Which is I did not account for the diameter of the bit cutting. So when I ordered the acrylic, I ordered it for a 7 by 10 inch piece, which is what my design called for. Well, I forgot that, I'm putting it inside of a pocket that it's sliding in, so I need that 1/4 of an inch on each side to account for the this pocket. So it should have been 7.5 by 10. Because of that thing.
Mistake.
So it completely is a rookie mistake. But so I ended up having to get another sheet of acrylic and recut it, which was frustrating because I had already cut the HDPE, which is more expensive than the acrylic, and I didn't want to recut that. So the clear acrylic is what got cut.
Are the shavings off of those both equally staticky?
Yeah, no. The HDPE, I didn't have any static issues with. The acrylic, yeah, it sticks to the blade like crazy, and everything else. But the HDPE plastic, no, it just brushed away. The little that didn't get caught by
I've had an
the
experience
dust
flattening
collector.
a slab that had some epoxy in it, and that was a pain in the ass.
Yeah, the epoxy stuff, yeah, is definitely HDPE. It's the same stuff that like professional chefs use in their plastic cutting boards that you see because they can, just put them through a dishwasher to sanitize and everything really easily. But it doesn't hold a static charge, at least not that I'm aware of. So,
Fun fact, there are USDA guidelines on how deep cuts can be on those boards to preserve the amount of cleanliness they need. Because I one time had someone ask me about, like, essentially running through all of their boards through, like, a planer to just get them refreshed. They ended up doing something different for it, but it was very. I learned something new off of that. So if my planer had been wider, I might have been able to just quickly run those through and make a quick buck on a project.
Yeah, it definitely, the deeper the cut, it definitely, because your bacteria can get down there and grow and get stuck.
Yeah, there's more surface
water.
area because it's like, instead of just a flat surface, now it's like a complex surface that there's lots of nooks and crannies for them to hide.
Which we'll talk a little bit about in customer service, but this is why it's really important to give your customers care instructions so that they know once they really cut up their cutting board that they need to contact you to have it resurfaced. But we'll talk more about that in a minute.
Customers doing what you tell them.
Yeah.
What a fallacy.
Fallacy.
Shut up and take my money.
So as far as selling, this week, I really haven't done much as far as selling. My digital files are still doing really well. I think everybody's... my guess is the official ramp up to creators making for the holiday season has started. Now that summer is kind of sadly winding to an end, especially with school coming up soon, which boggles my mind. I feel like summer just started for me, so I'm sad. We already passed our 9 o'clock, our last 9 o'clock sunset here in the area, and it just makes me sad. So
I'm ready for my son to be at school because he has like nothing going on now that all his camps and stuff are over, and so like I love my son, but there's only so many hours a day that you need to be watching over them. I'll talk about this a little bit more in my section, though.
Yeah, my lead up to Vegas was so big. I feel like that was my summer, and so now that that's over, I'm like, yeah, let's party, let's go camping. Like, we're going camping this weekend, but at the same time, it's like, oh, but it is already August, and it will be September and October in a blink of an eye, which means then it's Christmas. So
make sure and wake up Green Day before September ends.
Yeah. So anyways, that's so my digital files have been doing super well on Etsy right now. Still hasn't translated to my website as much as I would like. I understand because people go to Etsy to find digital files. So I was hoping to get a little bit more of that traffic. I do have some new digital files I'm going to be releasing soon, including some cribbage board bundle packs of different designs that I've been working on. So I'm working on that. Speaking of my website, I did just find out that my website designer, won an award for my website. He didn't
so that
even...
means you get a discount on your website, right?
I hope so. I mean, it was free to me anyway, but I do pay him for upkeep. But he was a starting out new guy, and so we did a deal together to work together. Now we can pay. You can pay him in exposure for the upkeep. Yeah, exactly. But no, I guess somebody reached out to him and said, "Hey, you've won an award for design and blah blah blah." And he's like, "How did I even get entered?" Because he has no idea. So I'm still learning the specifics, and I'll share that once I have it. But
as long as it wasn't like a JD Power award, because those are a sham.
They are, but they look good on a wall somewhere. So
I just remember, gosh, was it like the late 2000s where like there was just so many car commercials with the JD Power Awards, but I don't know if I've seen those for a long time.
I just don't think that people care about them anymore. Like in the 90s, it was a big deal. Like 80s and 90s, JD Power was a huge thing, and then they, like you said, they started handing them out like participation trophies, and now nobody cares. Which they didn't really mean anything anyway. But yeah. So that's what I've been selling. What have you been selling, Alex?
Yeah, so we touched on some of this a little bit, but during the county fair, which I had alluded that my son was there with me, so he was there kind of helping. And by helping, I mean one of his friends whose parents also had a booth in the area, they would come and play at the booth and get in the way all the time. So I kind of had to, like, tell them, all right, guys, I can't have you playing in here because other people need to be able to come through. So I kind of had to, like, brush them off a little. Because it, like, I mean, they were doing what kids do. They were playing with the toys that were on the table, and they're like, yeah, these are Peter's, so it's fine that we play with them. But I was like, yeah, you gotta give other people room to come in and see the stuff. So it was helpful, though, when I needed a bathroom break or whatever, that I could leave it, and my son was fully capable of taking care of customers and explaining stuff. He is very much a matter-of-fact kid, and, like, he will explain stuff that just with so much detail and talk you through everything and the pricing and all this stuff. So it's like, he has got it down. Like, he is like a born salesman. Either that or middle management, one of the two. He's really great at delegating tasks. So when he needs something done, he cons you into doing it. So anyway, so I could not keep Toothless and Light Fury articulated fidgets on my tables to save my life. Like, they were just flying off. I probably sold about if I combine both of them, it was probably like 25 of those.
Wow.
And, like, it would always come by, and I would print more, and then I'd have them out, because I could probably get I got about 4 of them in a batch, and then I'd have people, I'd be like, I'm printing more, you can come back later, and then they'd come back, and those 4 had already sold.
Nice.
So I told them to come back again the next day and ask and see if they were able to come pick up those. But also, the articulated Dark Charizard that I had was very popular, even among people that weren't really, like, Pokemon aficionados. They just liked the design and the colors of it, because it was the, like, black and, like, cyan blue color, and he has, like, flames coming out of his mouth and everything like that, so it's pretty cool. We had a few of those light switch plates sell, like the cow print ones. You know, it being the fair and people showing cows, like, cow print, like, you figured that it would sell a little bit. Lots of Eevees. I have found that the popularity for Eevee is astounding, because it was not like a Pokemon that I was particularly drawn to, but I found that a lot of people just absolutely love Eevee and love Eevee everything, just because they just find him to be so adorable and cute. And then we did sell Pokedexes, which hold like 33 cards in them, so it's a Pokedex that can hold, like, you can make it so that it can hold, like, a full deck, which is like 60 cards or something like that. But we just sold, like, the half-size ones, so we sold several of those, and they, like, my son had the good idea of putting some of his Pokemon cards in there to, like, show, all right, that's the display item has, you know, a holographic Pokemon card in there, and so, like, it resonates with the kids where they see it in there in action, like, oh yes, this is what it's for, like, this is what it's doing, even if they weren't, like, super familiar with the you know, the original Pokedex. I had mentioned the Labubus before, and I had sold a good amount of those, so I might dip my toe into that a little bit as well, because there's also apparently a market for Labubu accessories, like shoes and hats and, like, other stuff that goes with them. So, like, they'll, like, yeah, it's like, you know, it's the, like, it's the new, like, whenever you have, like, imagine the giggly Japanese girl who has, like, all the little, like, cutesy things, like, it's the stuff that, like, that person would have as, like, accessories. So I'm sure Braden's dad knows about the giggling Taiwanese girls, but we won't get into that. You're welcome, Braden. Anyway, we sold some Pokeballs.
I'm not part of this conversation whatsoever.
We had Pokeballs sell pretty well as well. So just like the standard Pokeball that, like, opens up and has space inside of it. The kids really like that.
Right.
I did sell a few of the Pokeballs that were themed to Eevee and Charmander, but those ones weren't quite as popular because they're a little bit more expensive because they have more colors and they're a little bit more complicated to assemble, and those ones don't actually open up with a hollow center. Like, those are just a decorative item. They're not functional in any form or fashion. So those ones, we still sold a few of those, though. I think I have like maybe 1 or 2 of those left. And then we sold all of those long 5-foot dragons that I was talking about, the articulated ones. And I think having the variety of colors and the silk PLA that has like the color changes on as it goes through, like every few layers it changes to a different color that's shiny and like either gold or pink or whatever, did pretty well. So I'll definitely be printing more of those to have on hand for the farmers market. I probably won't sell quite as many, just because there aren't nearly as many people at the farmers market, but it signaled to me that like the price point was good and they will in fact sell. I'll just have a few of them on hand to have for inventory for this next upcoming farmers market. I did have a bunch of special requests come through as well. So a couple of different Pokemon cards that I had not printed before. I had a kid who wanted to print me a Skyline, the car. He wanted a model of that, and that one kind of gave me a little bit of grief with the print because it was a new one, because it involved a little bit of assembly, and like the windows were printed independently, and I was trying to use my like silk silver PLA on those to make it a little bit more shiny than the regular gray, but for whatever reason it was just having some odd surface finish issues that was kind of like warping it a little bit. So I had a few reprints there that kind of slowed me up, and then eventually what I did was I started asking people if they were in the area for those custom orders, because then I could kind of push them back a little bit and save a little bit of time filling my inventory back up for other stuff that I would sell to people who were only there for the fair itself and weren't local.
Right.
So I did move a few of those requests that way. And what I ended up doing with those, because I had run out of business cards, is I would get their cell number and then I would just text them my name and whatever the 3D print it was that they were requesting, so then I could come back to it later. Is
Nice.
an easy way to just quick and dirty keep track of those requests. Because I was like, during the show, I was just going through all the stuff that I had and like, okay, if I print this and that, it'll take about this long and this will end before the evening, and then I can start this as an overnight print, and just trying to like organize and do all of that stuff was just trying to like balance a whole bunch of, moving hula hoops and all sorts of weird stuff, trying to make it all work out. So I'll probably have a few more requests come in as well, because some of the people had asked about stuff for like their kids for like birthday and Christmas, so that they had options going into the holidays. So that was good that I had some of those coming in, and some of those were repeat customers that had come and seen me at the farmers market. And so, because I've got a few kids that like absolutely love Pokemon stuff and are always going to buy the next thing that I print that's like Pokemon themed. So I try to make sure that I'm getting as much of that variety as possible to kind of like keep them coming back, so that they are, it's worth their time to come back, because there's always something new that they actually do like to see as I'm printing stuff. And then since I did have a couple of failed prints here and there, I did do some like discounted pricing on a few things where it was like, well, this dragon finished, but the last bit of the tail was off, so I just clipped it off and like sold it for like, essentially a quarter of the price, and that still sold. So it's like, you know what, that's better than throwing it in the trash. So I did a few of those, and I I finally did one of the things where you print off a top hat to put on the failed print that you just glue on top. So it was like a little Pikachu with a top hat now. So I have one of those that I am selling. So
Perfect.
So yeah, it was a very good show. We did very well. We probably top line revenue was about $1,500 for the, let's see, what was it? Technically a 4-day show. I mean, the last day was basically tear down. So we did pretty well, especially considering that like I didn't have any overnight stay or other added expenses. So it's kind of been my progression of selling, where I started off at the swim meets where we like basically didn't sell anything the first time. We only had a little bit of stuff, and then we started selling more things during those, and then farmers market, and building our way up to doing some of this stuff. So it's kind of been nice seeing that progression as we've changed, iterated, and sold more stuff as time has gone on.
Mm-hmm.
And nice. I know eventually I'm gonna pull in more of the woodworking stuff, but I've just been dialing in the 3D printing stuff, and it's easier to keep that, because I can keep the 3D printer running while I work on my, backlog of orders, although I didn't get to that this past week since we had all of that fair stuff. But that's why I haven't been pressing my woodworking stuff super hard at the shows, is just because, like, I can have the machine run basically unattended just fine and do other stuff. So I'm kind of getting it optimized before I start reeling in more of the other stuff. I did bring in the laser engraved house thing to kind of like set up and show that I do laser engraving, so that's about as much as I did with like woodworking items that I had there. So I had a couple people ask about that were interested in that when they saw it. So
Nice.
That's everything that I had.
I'm watching you, Wazowski. Always watching.
Whew, she's nuts.
All right. So this week, what we've been watching. So for me, a couple people on Instagram and a couple people on YouTube. First of all, and I'm going to butcher this name. I think it's Beluge Insam. Beluge Insam. Beluginsam. Anyways, they have been making
whale named Sam.
Yeah, maybe. But they have been making these really cool series of wooden ducks. And they're made out of a whole bunch of different exotic woods. So, you've got your black feathers are made out of wenge, and, you've got maples. And they also have been dyeing maple burl. So, like, he made a beautiful blue jay that was all dyed blue maple burl. Just some gorgeous pieces. They're absolutely awesome. So I've been really impressed with them. So great job there.
Is that colored burl? Are you talking like a finish that had color, or are you talking like when they infused the entire thing with like a penetrating epoxy?
It's not. It's a little bit of the both. It is a finish, but it's not penetrating. But it does penetrate. So it's the same kind of stuff that they do when you're talking about guitars. When you're coloring that maple guitar, you're using. I think it starts with an A. No, it's not aerosol, but it's like a sol or something like that. It's a type of dye that you mix in with like a penetrating oil, and then it oils. It goes into the wood, and then you finish over it. So anyways, So the other maker I want to shout out on Instagram was Kristen Creations. I've shouted out her before. She did an amazing job.
Is it Kristen or Kirsten's Creations?
Oh, maybe it's Kirsten, or it's Kristen. Kirsten, probably Kirsten.
It could be a typo either way. Either way, I'm sure we'll find it.
Yeah, it's also me, so, I'm bad with names. But anyways, Kirsten's Creations. She's an amazing scroll saw artist, and she did this awesome Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers Chip and Dale art. She's been hitting a whole bunch of pop culture in her current series.
Oh, the Chipmunks, not the dancer guys.
Yes, the Chipmunks, not the dancers.
Not Chris Farley and who was the other guy who did the Chip and Dale skit on SNL?
Yeah,
Patrick Swayze. I think it was Patrick Swayze.
I think so. Yeah. But anyway, so
we need a scroll saw of that.
That's why I said Rescue Rangers. Rescue Rangers. Chip and Dale. Okay, anyways. So, yeah, phenomenal. She's been doing a whole pop culture series, and I've been really impressed with it. Going over to YouTube, Fulton Fine Woodworks is doing a series. So everything's about a series today. It's him and his son are building a boat from scratch. Another woodworker building a boat, but they're doing like a 1940s old style like speedboat. Think of like the old wooden boat that you saw like James Bond driving around in the canals and stuff.
It's encased with it, and it's got like the nice big area in front of the
yes, in front of the driver
wheel.
area.
That's nice wood.
Yes, so they're doing that. It's all out of Sapelian maple, and it just looks amazing. So they just dropped the 10th video, and I would say, looking at it from the end of this, they're probably 3/4 of the way done with the boat. They've, at least as far as the build goes, and then you've got the finishing on top of it too. But man, is it going to look pretty when it's done. And then Make Something over on YouTube did a series on going to thrift stores and finding old thrift store furniture and then turning them into find woodworking pieces. So hacking them up and reusing parts and making more of a fine woodworking item off of something that you can find at a thrift store. So an upcycle video, but it was a really good series, and I enjoyed, especially as somebody who likes to go look at thrift stores and go like, oh yeah, I could do something with that table. Like, it was a good series to watch. So that's what I've been watching. How about you?
I haven't had a whole lot of like maker stuff that I've come across, but some of the things that I have. So, and I've told Chelsea this. She's over at Evergreen Daydreams. So she did it was a story showing her go from a picture of, in this instance, a cat, and converting it into the line drawing that she uses then to cut into the scroll saw work and fill in all of the different colors. And I was like, Chelsea, you need to make that into a reel because that is awesome content right there. Like, you've already made the video. It's awesome. So I always love seeing Chelsea's work. And then Zach at Double K Products. So he has been working on these round tables that are like, I want to say they're like 60 inches in diameter, like burl, like just absolutely beautiful that he's been working on. And I think those have been in his stories. I don't think he has posted those particular ones as a reel. He's done some in the past that he's had as posts over on Instagram. But these ones... I just like the round tables with all of that burl is just a look that I absolutely love, but I don't know if I have a place for something like that in my house that would actually like look like it would fit. So hopefully I can someday upgrade from our crappy table to something like that. Although our dogs, like, we have to have a high table because they constantly are getting to the top of it because they're just so large. Like, even though it's like a high top, our one bigger dog like can basically rest his face on the table. So we someday we'll upgrade. Hopefully I can get a good upgrade in there sometime. So that's my short list as of right now because I was busy chasing my son and trying to fill custom order requests at the fair.
Makes sense.
Summarize it in one word.
So this week's main topic discussion is customer service. Specifically, so I had two things I wanted to bring up around customer service. One is customer service at markets and things at live events, and then customer service when somebody does a custom order or orders from you directly. And we can kind of make this a discussion, Alex, too, and if you want to jump in. For me, at markets, one of the first things that there are some rules that I like to follow. One, offer multiple ways to pay. I like having multiple ways. I find it's useful for customers that didn't bring cash, don't have a credit card, only want to pay with their phone. Things like, I have Square, I have cash available, I have PayPal, I have Venmo. So I have all the different ways, in my opinion, that is needed to pay. I consider that part of customer service. I offer bags to my customers. I have paper bags that have my logo stamped on them that we do. I also have larger plastic bags for people who buy larger items that need a little bit more heft to them. I have tissue paper if somebody wants to wrap it. I'm always smiling at my markets. I always recommend don't touch your phone while you're at a market. That's the first customer service thing that people will get frustrated. They don't, if they're trying to talk to you or they're coming up to your booth and you're on your phone, they're not interested. You're not interested. So,
it makes it feel like you are being inconvenienced by their presence.
Exactly, absolutely, and then definitely listen when people want to share at a market too, because there are plenty of people that are there. This is their people time, and so they want to talk to you and learn about your process and stuff. And that is customer service, in my opinion, of talking to them, listening to them, especially if they want to tell you a story. Like, it can be busy and sometimes that's frustrating, but often those people either will purchase from you or they drive business to you because they're interacting with your booth and people are like, oh, what are they looking at? I find when somebody's in your booth, there are more people that come to your booth. They become champions
of your products very easily.
Absolutely.
And I know this is one thing that I've gotten accustomed to is if there are other people coming around, I will say to them, hold on just a second, I'll come back to that. Let me talk to this person over here. And you can go talk to them, and then you can come back, and everything is completely fine. You have not, completely... It feels like you're blowing them off, but it's perfectly fine, and it works well, and everyone wins in that scenario because you get to continue talking with that person. They get to talk with you, and you have... address the other concern of another customer that has come by. So that's a perfectly easy way to do that. It's okay to tell them, just put a pin in something and come back to it, as soon as you get to the other customers. Because they'll understand that you're getting other customers.
Yeah, and then definitely as long as you come back. I mean, they're there purchasing. They understand you're coming to talk to other customers too. But yeah, when you say, hey, let me come right back to you in just a sec. And then when you do, you definitely make them feel valued. And so, as you said, they become a champion for you, which is really great. Anything else at markets that you do that's customer service wise that you would recommend?
So one thing that I will do, because I've worked booths in the past before doing this, but I try to look at the booth through your customer's eyes, and whether this is something that's in a booth or at the store, walking by it how someone else would walk by it and not how you, the owner of the booth, would. Because that's why I sent you the picture of my booth setup, is to get additional input on what type of layout would work better, and getting a little bit of feedback, because and also paying attention when you do have a setup of what works well or what doesn't work well, because you can watch how people are interacting with your stuff and figure out okay, this is grabbing their attention, this is good. Like when I laid out those dragons full length, it was a wow factor for a lot of the kids that made them come and run up. So okay, I need to make sure and have one of these out and all the way front to, or head to toe, or I guess head to tail, laid out, because it'll draw the kids in and it makes the parents stop as well. Whether or not the parents like that is a whole nother story, but trying to make sure that you are understanding how they experience your booth. Because the other thing too is that especially for mine, where a lot of the customers are kids, because most of the stuff that I was selling is 3D prints or toys, is their vantage point is much lower than what an adult's is. So they are looking at it almost eye level to the table itself, and what they see is going to be much different than what the adults see on that layout. So how you stack stuff and how you portray it is going to be experienced differently. So just having that in the back of your mind of, all right, if I have this way, the little kids running by that are 6 or 7 years old, they may not see the stuff in the back because the other tables are in the way. So I need to have the stuff up front that they can see first that's going to be attracting them. And whether it's, colors that catch their attention or particular models that are intriguing to kids. And one other thing that I do is I have both white and black tables so that I can place certain items in certain areas, because some of them, it's hard to see them when there's a black backdrop, because either it's black, or on the other end of the spectrum, if I have skeleton 3D prints that are white, that basically just blends in with the white table, so I need to have a black background.
Right,
So
and that makes sense.
understanding, like, being able to pick out those items so that the 5 to 10 seconds that they have looking at your booth, they're actually seeing something that makes them stop and come in and look further, because that's the first thing they have to do is get their attention.
Right,
And
absolutely.
so making sure that you walk through the steps of their experience can really help you understand and continually get better at making it pull them in and find what it is that they're looking for.
Moving for me over to custom orders when I work on somebody that contacts me from my website or at a market to do a custom order or something. So I live on a few things. One, make sure that you ask questions so that you guys are clear. There's nothing worse than starting a project as far as the customer service aspect goes and realizing you guys were not on the same page, and you've started creating something that they don't want, and it becomes the whole issue of you having to fix it. And then are you liable for those costs? Are they liable? Like, there's just, make sure you're asking questions and getting that design and everything signed off of up front. I always like to say, be upfront about costs. I tell people what my costs are. I tell them how much I charge per hour in the market or in the of my own time, and I tell them what my my formula is how I do my stuff, because I want them to feel like I'm not just telling them that I'm going to charge them $1,000 per table. I want them to understand what that actually means for me to create one. And I find that most people, when they realize that, oh, okay, so your materials are going to cost you $400, you're only actually making $600. Man, that's not much when you talk about that it's going to take you 3 weeks of your time to make this thing. Like, there's just so much that people don't understand about this industry that I really like to say, for me personally, I tell them what it's going to cost, what I charge for it per hour, and my formula as far as like consumables and profit. And I always ask for a deposit because I don't want to have to fight with them later as far as what you said, you were okay with this. Like, to me, I give them a invoice with, here's the deposit amount, this is what the estimate was. And I have a disclaimer on there saying the estimate can be over, can be under. It just depends on what happens, but we'll talk throughout the whole communication. And then speaking about as far as communicating, I communicate throughout the entire process. So I give them a timeline. I let them know when I finally, like, if I'm backed up and I tell them it's going to be six to 8 weeks for your project, and then 3 weeks come by, and I check in and just say, hey, I'm starting on your project now. I was able to get to it earlier than I thought. My estimate is that it'll take the next 5 days in my shop and a couple more days for curing. So you should have it around this date. And then I'll send them photos as I'm making things. And not like, sometimes I'll do like a full photo, but usually it's like, here's a pile of the sawdust, and oh, look, I got a leg cut out, and like things like that, not to give, because a lot of people don't understand how ugly woodworking projects look until you actually get it together.
I mean, you could spice it up with a boudoir photo, but I mean,
not for me.
Well, yeah, that's why I have talked with customers sometimes about pictures where they want pictures, and sometimes I'm like, I need to wait until we get to a certain stage, because sometimes it brings up more questions than answers. So it's a double-edged sword that you got to ride that fine line between showing progress and them getting concerned, like, well, this isn't how it was. It's not looking how I imagine. It's like, well, when it has finish on it, it's going to be different. So sometimes you could just kind of got to play off of that particular customer to understand, like, if they are a very high-strung person, like you get that vibe from them, I would say to delay some of those pictures, because
absolutely
they're going to nitpick some of those things and be like, well, why isn't it like this? Like, why is this color not look like that? And so it's reading into what that particular person is like. You'll need to tweak that communication just a little bit so that everything is, you stay on track. Because the other thing too is that people also don't understand that when you are making something, when you say it's a project that's going to be, it's going to take like 6 months, what they don't realize is that it's probably like 5.5 months of other projects getting done, and then like maybe half a month of you actually working on their stuff. So if they come in and they're like asking for updates, and it's like 4 months in, it's like, well, this is where it can be a little bit dicey, where it's like, well, I'm working through the queue, I'm gonna get to yours, and you also have to be careful on your wording, because sometimes they can feel like it gives the impression that they are not important to you. Because think about it this way, you may have 10, 20, 30 custom orders in queue, and you're trying to balance all of the needs of different people, but they're the only person that sees their own project, and that's theirs, and like it might be a piece that goes like in their living room, and they walk by that every day, and that reminds them, I don't have this yet. So it's something that is going to be much more top of mind for them, because they are just one out of maybe 30 of those items, whereas you're trying to manage multiple people, and so sometimes you are going to have upset customers, and that's just going to be the reality of it. Like sometimes you run into the what's the name for that Star Trek scenario where you're not going to win, that Kirk like cheated on the programming and like programmed
Maru.
Yes, that is the one, where you are just going to have to eat a bad customer service experience, and you're just going to have to trudge through it and see how you can make the best of it. Because sometimes you got to weigh the needs of the many against the few on some of those projects and say, all right, if I don't get to this other project, I'm still going to be able to do these other 4 or 5, but if I, try and speed through this other project, it's going to delay like the other 4, like that's gonna make more unhappy people. So sometimes you run into those scenarios where you're just trying to make as few people pissed off as you as possible, and that's just the reality of it, and trying to trudge through that. I'm kind of in that scenario right now with a few of the projects that I'm working through, where some of your stuff takes longer than expected, and it's got a waterfall effect on a bunch of other projects, and so it you end up having to talk to a bunch of people, and make sure that when you're talking with people, you remember what you said last, because I forget all the time. So that's why I prefer to have some type of electronic or recorded communication medium, because then it helps me remember what it is that we discuss. It's not that I don't like phone calls and in-person meetings, it's that it's much more difficult to summarize and keep track of it than it is like emails, texts, and other electronic communication. So if you do have a call or a in-person meeting with someone, getting it written down somewhere, or at least kept track of in whatever way works for you, is going to help you out tremendously. Because that's why when I was asking for cell phone numbers from people on the custom prints, why I would text them my name and the type of project that we talked about, because I've got about 10 people that I texted, and if I go back through those numbers, I'm not going to remember what we talked about, because like my son was going and messing around with something, and I was trying to explain something to them, and I was keeping an eye on another person who was looking at keychains, and we forget stuff all the time. And like I had a lady who wanted it was a little like a Walla keychain thing, and we talked like 10 minutes prior, and I had forgotten a color detail on there of which color they wanted on something. And fortunately, I did see them again and got their number, and I was like, I'm sorry, I tried to write it down, but I forgot the color that you wanted for the ring around the neck of this little water bottle keychain. What color did you want? And sometimes, like, just being realistic with your customers about that, and being like, you know what, I thought I wrote this down and I can't find my notes. What did we discuss on this particular thing? Because that's, it's, as much as we try and write everything down, sometimes we'll miss details. So it's always fine to like circle back and re-ask those questions. And sometimes you know, it sucks having to do that because it can feel a little bit embarrassing, but it's gonna help you in the end because it's better than having the wrong color. That's gonna like in having to like remake something because you didn't have like a 5-minute conversation with them about that before doing all of those, you know, finishing up that project.
Absolutely. And like as far as keeping track of what you say and stuff, like I personally, I have a clipboard with a piece of paper that talks about the project and the price and the quote and everything I've given them that travels with the project, whatever stage it's in, so that I always can add notes to it if we talk on the phone and I say, you know, hey, it's going to be another week or I'm going to get to it sooner. I write that down so I know that it's adjusted the timeline or so on. So I have all that tracked.
Well, yeah, and especially when you're talking about some of the custom orders, keeping track of like the deposit and how much is remaining on that balance is big, because you will very quickly forget how much someone paid because you're like, I think this person paid, but that other person didn't, and that becomes a very awkward conversation.
Absolutely
and
does. You don't want to ask, going, hey, did I get a deposit from you? No. Yes.
Yeah. So like, and one thing that I do is I do actually ask for like the bigger pieces that I have, the custom ones. I do actually ask for everything up front, but what I tell people is I there is a little bit of a trade-off here because I tell them this helps me lock in the pricing of materials because material pricing can fluctuate between the start of a project and when it's completed. And I tell them, all right, if there's any change in the amount of hours that it takes for me to do, like I eat that cost because I asked for all this stuff up front and I was able to get the materials right away at the current price that I was able to quote them at. So I do give them a little bit of a, I don't want to say an advantage, where because I asked for it up front, I essentially lock in that price, and if I misquote it, I'm going to eat some of the extra time that is invested in that project. And that helps me keep track of when people have paid for projects because they've all been paid. Like, I don't start on them unless they've actually been paid. So it does make the paperwork a little bit more streamlined for me. Now, whether or not this is something that works for you is going to be a whole other scenario because, like Alex said, like he does a deposit on his stuff, and then if there's changes in it, then he adjusts as necessary, which is a perfectly appropriate thing to ask people for. And if they scoff at that, then you're probably avoiding a customer that would have been a pain in the ass anyway.
Right, and I specifically asked for 50% of my quote, and that, again, the quote, I always quote them more than what I think it's going to end up costing, and that way, I can say at the end of the day, like if I quoted them 1,000, and hey, it only cost, you know, when I did my math and stuff, it was actually only 900. Then you only owe me 400 because I've already got 500 of a deposit. So, and at the end, and then for that also helps then customers feel like they, you know, oh, I got a deal. But sometimes it does go the other way if something we changed or added on or something cost way more, took way more time. But I do 50% specifically because I don't want to be out the costs of the material if the customer bails or doesn't follow through.
And that will happen. That will absolutely happen. You will
absolutely
have, like, you also have people that have, and this is the other reason why I do mine up front is because it happens where people, like, they might run into, you know, financial situations, like maybe they have some healthcare cost or a car breaks or whatever, and especially if it's like a custom project that they haven't received the item, they're going to try and claw back money so they can pay for that, and you're going to have to stand your own ground on stuff, especially if you have purchased the materials so that you are not out it, because the number one thing that you will get from people who do that are going to say, well, you can just convert it to another project. And it's like, that may not always be the case because I may not use this specific type of material for other projects. Like, because especially for the stuff that I do, like, I allow people to pick down to the board what's going to go into that project. And because it is a very specific type of figuring and whatnot, like, the chances of someone else wanting to use that same material are very, very slim. Now, if you're doing a lot of stuff where it's like all quarter sawn oak or something like that, where it's a very uniform type of wood, then that's probably a little bit easier of a scenario to work through. But if you're doing stuff that is much more unique, then that's going to come and bite you in the butt later on and become a sunken cost that you now have to bear if you did not get a non-refundable deposit, or it's something to basically cover the cost if that person does bail.
And I will say I always like to have everything in writing, because like the invoice that I give them, or I say invoice, it's really the quote for the project, but it's also the invoice I have them sign, and it says on there non-refundable deposit. And so that way they understand, so that if anybody ever comes back to you when this will happen, going, oh, I want that money back, we're not going to do the project anymore. Well, you signed a contract that says your deposit is non-refundable. So we can either finish this project together or you're out that deposit. So it can be harsh, but at the end of the day, you are a business and you need to protect yourself as well. So, yeah. And then, so one last thing that I do, especially is for after the process, is when I do, okay, so actually two things. When I, if I am shipping the product, I always include shipping for free. It's part of my cost, but I never charge a customer shipping. That way they feel like they're not being charged, especially in the world of Amazon today. Nobody wants to pay for shipping. If I am delivering it, I wear slacks and a shirt. I don't show up in jeans or my, shorts or something like that. Like, you dress somewhat nice. You don't have to go full suit or anything like that, but I'll wear khakis and a polo or something like that, because you are a business at the end of the day and you're showing up to deliver. And I actually have also had in the past the little footies that you see people put on when they do deliveries, the little things that flip over your shoes so that you don't get
they're kind of like
dirty.
hairnets for your feet. Yeah,
exactly. So I'll have a couple of them in my truck as disposables, and I'll throw them on if I need to go into the house, because it again, what you're showing to them is that you're a professional and that they feel valued, and that you're valuing their house, their property. And then finally, so I provide them maintenance care steps, a written out or typed out thing that has maintenance care, and I always provide the sample size of the refresh oil or whatever I used as a finishing for that maintenance. I provide them the first time of that supplies for free. With the idea is that then they can go and say, oh, this is what I need to get. I can easily just repurchase this.
Yeah.
They have that first one, so it feels like an extra little thing. And then lastly, I follow up with them a week or two afterwards. I ask, do they still love it? Is there anything else that has come up that needs to be addressed with it or anything like that? And at that point, if everything is done, that's when I ask for a testimonial for my website or something. I don't I don't do that beforehand, because I don't want it to feel like I'm pushing them for something.
Right.
I want to make sure that they are fully happy before I then ask for a recommendation.
You don't want them to give a 5-star because of the implication.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
yeah, and on the delivery side of things, I know that it also depends on if you are just delivering an item or actually installing something.
Yes.
Because I know that I'm a little bit more lax when it comes to what I wear, because it's like you expect me to wear what someone of my background of like making stuff would wear. Like, I don't show up with like completely covered in like sawdust and stuff, but it's like the type of clothes that I would wear as I'm working that are appropriate for what it is that I'm actually doing. Especially if it's for like, an install. And like he had mentioned, of just being considerate when you are in someone else's home, so that as you are doing an install, because like if I'm like installing some type of shelves or something that requires drilling into the wall, I always try and be as dustless as possible and vacuum up all the extra. And, if I need to go off with shoes and just be wearing socks, like, that's fine. As long as I'm not, causing more issues by doing that. But like, it always leaves a bad taste in your mouth when you have someone who's like working on your house and they like leave boot prints somewhere and like it's not cleaned up after the fact. It's one thing if like there's a boot print in there and then someone comes up and like wipes it before they leave, as opposed to like leaving for the end of the day and that's like still there. So that'll definitely go a long way. Basically doing things that show that you care. It could be a variety of things, and those are just a few of them that can highlight that.
Well, and with an install too, make sure, as you said, cleaning up that dust or just cleaning up your work area. I mean, we had a deck built for us here at this house, and because I'm not a deck guy, I don't want to be a deck guy, and I got to tell you, I was frustrated with this company when they finished because they were all done. They left, they packed up, they went, and I went out there and I found spent nails on the ground that they had just left laying around. There were still some offcuts that they had just thrown to the side and not picked up, and like just a whole bunch of stuff that was just not picked up that should have been picked up and made to look pretty, because it, you know, it's a nice presentation. It's your final thing. And I actually mentioned that in my review, and he's like, "Oh, well, we were going to come back and do it and clean that up." And I'm like, "Man, I wrote this review 3 weeks later. When were you going to come back and clean that up? Because you never did." So yeah, it's one thing if it's like, oh, this like rolled under the like the edge and it's like kind of like under an eave of some kind and you can't see it, opposed to being like something that's like out in the open that's obviously been forgotten. Yeah, we had just had chunks of pressure treated 2x4 that they had thrown into the yard and just left there. Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to touch on that you had mentioned was doing some of that follow-on, because if you have someone who is a customer, making them a returning customer is easier than putting in the time to get a new customer.
Absolutely.
Because you've already established a rapport with this person, and if the experience is good for both of you, doing a follow-on request, like maybe not request is the right word, but like maybe 3 to 6 months out, just like setting a reminder for yourself of some kind to say like, hey, check in on this person, see what their needs are. You know, maybe they had mentioned doing like, you know, some nightstands or like a coffee table or something like that, and you could circle back on that idea. And sometimes they may be like, oh yeah, we just got something from IKEA because we needed something cheap, and it's like, yeah, cool, that's fine. But other times they may be like, oh yeah, we do still need that, we just haven't found something that we wanted, and then you can start that dialogue again of figuring out what they want for that particular project. And since you've gotten a little bit more communication with that person and probably gotten to know them a little bit better, that communication is probably going to be a little bit more streamlined, rather than figuring out how to interact with someone that you've potentially never met before. So setting reminders for that kind of stuff is good, and counting on your own memory to remember stuff is an easy way to let those things get completely forgotten, because I know my memory sucks and I do not depend on it.
Oh yeah, we all have bad memories. It's something that I will also suggest doing. So as I don't do a lot of large furniture, so when I do a larger piece, I actually do in my Google Calendar, I do mark down that first year anniversary to reach out and just say, hey, it's been a year. If you haven't reapplied that oil, go ahead and reapply that oil. And I also, that first holiday season after the holidays, or during the holidays, I send out a holiday card and I just say, I really enjoyed working with you guys this year. Thank you guys so much. You know, if you're interested in doing a returning customer gets $50 off or something like that. Like just that cold, not necessarily a cold call, but just a little extra thing over the top that sets you apart from others.
Yeah, and if you've already established a lot of customers, you don't necessarily have to do like all of them during the holidays. You can like split them up and just do them like once a month. Maybe you do like a handful of customers that you reach out to it. Like it's nice having a reason to reach out, but you can just reach out and send that whenever. Like there's no one stopping you. Like it's, I mean, nothing other than like social norms or like social barriers or like whatever I'm trying to describe, but you can just reach out to people whenever. It's completely fine.
Well, and on my invoice, again, since it's a contract, I did put in there that when you sign up, or when you sign this, you're signing up for my newsletter. And so I do capture people's emails, and I do put them into my newsletter as well on my new website. So that way people they'll get those monthly emails as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and, oh gosh, what was I going to say there? It was about, some follow-on stuff. No, it was on the other end of it. So when you are, because we were talking about some of the tail end of stuff and doing kind of like follow-on stuff. Back to the early on discussions where you have with a customer. When you are quoting stuff, one thing that I do to make sure that I don't invest too much time into any one person before they actually commit to anything is getting just enough information to understand how much to quote and throwing it out there so they have a number and getting them to say either yes or no. Because naturally, our inclination is to avoid no at all costs because we want everything to be a yes. But the reality is that not everything is going to be a yes by customers, and you need to filter out the customers who are serious about doing stuff from ones that are maybe potentially just kicking tires, so that you can focus in on the customers who have actually committed purchases from you, because you don't want to be strung along by someone, you want to give them that pricing, because even though that might scare them away, that might be a good thing because they may not have been a good customer. They may have just continually asked questions until you actually force them to sign the dotted line on, a contract of some time. And one thing that went along with asking those questions of people when I was at the booth was that I was talking with a lady, and she had mentioned that her husband is like, yeah, he knows what to actually produce that people actually want. And so that's to me, that was a huge compliment, because producing stuff that people actually want is a very difficult thing to do if you've ever attempted to do it. And that's why asking those questions is such a big deal, is because it reduces the amount of potential inventory that you can have because of products that are either unwanted if you're pre-producing them, or for a custom thing, if you're not asking enough questions, it doesn't turn out how they want, and then they're upset and they're wanting to modify it, and you're kind of at an impasse where there was some kind of miscommunication, and what was made doesn't match what their expectations were. And sometimes you can have just difficult customers, but putting forth as much effort as you can to make sure that you capture all of those details is definitely going to help you, and that those early on conversations are really going to do you a lot of justice if you recall that stuff and you kind of I don't want to say pore over that information, but just keep it in mind as you are doing stuff, because it will, paying attention to those details will have good I don't want to say consequences, because consequences makes it sound like it would be a bad thing.
Good karma?
Yeah, we'll just go with that. Good karma.
Yeah.
And as Forrest Gump says, that's all I have to say about that.
Good news, everyone!
I don't know if this was the right soundbite for this week, because we don't really have any events, but we do have update/sad news, everyone.
Yeah, so I put in we had mentioned kind of the Pat Lap saga with Lee Valley, and just to quickly summarize the update. So one of the more recent episodes of Wood Talk, I think it was episode 587, Mark did a very good job of describing the situation, because he actually went through the actual legal documents to figure out what was the legal action and what was actually being pursued in there. And he, like, I am not going to be able to describe it nearly as well as he did. So if you go to, I think it was episode 587 or something like that, they do talk about it there. So if you want the latest information on what is going on there, I think they did a very good job of summarizing that so that you can be informed of what is transpiring on that particular topic.
Do you have something you want to share as far as like your gut reaction after listening to that episode?
It's complicated, I think. And I think what it brings to light is that it's very important to have those contracts brought out, and ownership of digital media, and like in those contracts, who keeps it, and what are the effects of it? Because I think it just becomes very apparent that like digital media is a very murky business when you are producing content, and having that contract in place is gonna help more than anything. And even if it sounds like or if it feels like it's too much, you're probably doing the right amount of work if you are working with a company on something to make sure that those expectations are in line. Because the very high level is ownership of videos, despite it being on someone's YouTube channel, and whose ownership there is for that content, because that brand may have paid for content, but it's also something that the person who has made that content likely has rights to, especially if it's spelled out in that contract. And sometimes it's tough for us to speculate all of the details without seeing that contract. And all the details that are in there. So anyway, they summarize that very well. And of course, we don't know all of the details of it, but it does bring to light a few more details so that you can understand it a little bit better.
I do have to say I was a little disappointed in, and I'm not saying one way or the other. I do have to say I'm disappointed on how Lee Harvey Tools is.
Lee Valley.
Lee Valley. God, I can't speak today. I'm so sorry.
Lee Harvey Oswald Tools.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
That wouldn't be a popular brand.
No, it wouldn't be. Lee Valley Tools. One of the things I was really frustrated with was that they started blocking people who even talk about it on their social media channels. That seems
to be a very telling sign of how you manage something, if you are silencing people who want to support their friend. Right,
exactly. Like I did post a post that said, the hashtag FreePatLap that people are doing, and I have since been blocked from their social media site. And so it's just very interesting to see how somebody responds to something like that. And I'm not the only one. I've talked to multiple people who did that and have been blocked. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. But as you said, that's episode 587 over on Wood Talk, if you are interested. That's about all of the news we have. Again, remember, we don't have a show next week. Mm-hmm. We're off for a week. And what were you going to say, Alex?
Is the Texas Woodworking Festival the next thing that's coming up?
Yes, Texas Woodworking Festival is the next big maker and woodworking events. That is taking place in September. On September, if you're doing the maker side of it and the content creator side, it starts on the 11th, and it goes the 12th, 13th, and 14th. So there are still tickets available for all of the classes that I've seen, including the maker dinner on Friday night. So make sure if you're interested, go to TexasWoodworkingFestival.com and check it out. I'll be there. Make sure you say hi. I'll have stickers for you if you come say hi and that you listen to the podcast.
Yes. And of course, you can find us at patreon.com/whatchamakinshow if you would like to support us for as little as $5.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. And just remember,
in case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.